Today, we're going to be making a fun handkerchief skirt. Welcome, if you are new here, I do sewing and DIY related content, and today we are going to be making a handkerchief skirt. The first step is you want to measure your waist as well as measure your hips, and then you want to determine how long you want your skirt to be. But the way this handkerchief skirt works is you're going to have a shorter end and a long end, so make sure you get the measurement for however short you would want it. Next, with my fabric, as you can see, it has a direction. All these little birds are going one way. So I wanted to make sure that when I had the skirt on, the birds would be all facing down so that none of them were upside down. The cat definitely decided to play around and help with this too. So I just cut this into panels and then kind of restructured it. I used my serger to do this so that I could just get one long sheet so that all the birds were going the exact same direction. Next, when you're folding your fabric, you're going to be folding it back in half, so similar to how you probably got it off the bolt. And then you're going to be folding it for a circle skirt, except we won't be cutting a curve at the bottom, so you'll only be cutting a curve at the top. So the first step is using your waist measurement. You're going to divide that number by 6.28, and in the bottom I'll include how I got there. And then you're going to measure down from that straight part and just kind of make a curve using that measurement. So mine was around 4.8 inches, so you're just going to be doing that all the way around. And at the bottom, you're just going to be cutting it off at a straight line, and this is what gives us that handkerchief effect. So with the way that I had done my fabric, you can see I have two different patterns here. I'm just going to be sewing up one side using my serger so that I can make this one continuous piece, and then you'll still have one side that will be completely open, as that's where our zipper is going to go. Next, for your waistband, to cut this out, you're just going to want one very long piece of material depending on how you want to do this. I'm going to be adding buttons, so I'll include the dimensions for what this ended up being in the bottom. I believe it was around 38 inches long by 7 inches wide. Next, for the lining, since the skirt is going to have a lining, you're going to be cutting it out very similarly to how we did the top, with that curve going around 4.8 inches and then marking it and doing that curve around it. But then you will also want to make this a circle skirt. I messed up on this and ended up having to go back and redo it. So learn from me and pick a very short measurement and then cut that as a circle skirt as well. Now for the first step of our actual handkerchief material, so this is my bird fabric, what I'm going to do is go around and make a rolled hem on everything that would be seen, so everything except the waistband portion. And what this means is you're going to fold your fabric once, probably about a ½ inch, and then you're going to be folding this over again. And this will make it so that you have no raw edges and get a very nice and clean finish. Now you could use an iron to do this, so you could press it out, but I ended up, since my fabric was pretty stiff, just going through and sewing it like that. And repeat that hemming for the lining as well. Next, it's time to actually start working on the zipper. So for this skirt, I decided to be adventurous and try to use an invisible zipper, as it ended up being pretty straightforward. The first step with an invisible zipper is you're going to press it out. You want to be sure that you have it as open as possible. And then the next is you're going to be placing the zipper with your fabric with right sides together. I ended up basting this so that I could see what it was going to look like at first, and then I'm going to go back through if all looks good and I'll do the full stitch. But I would definitely recommend basting, especially if it's your first one. Now for an invisible zipper, there is an invisible zipper foot. Now some machines come with them. You can also get them from Amazon, like I did this one, and then I think there are some hacks for using a regular zipper foot. So here's what my zipper looks like when I basted it on. It looks pretty good. So now I'm going to go through and actually pin the other side zipper on as well. So just with right sides together, and then I'm going to take a stitch as close as I can to those teeth. So here's what my zipper looks like all basted up. Everything looks good and it's able to turn. And now I'm going to do the actual real stitching. So in the presser foot, you see there's little grooves. So you're going to want one zipper on that groove and then just take it as close as you can. I did adjust my sewing machine needle position to get it even closer. But once you do that, at the end, you'll get this really nice and clean finish. So this is what my zipper looks like. I absolutely love how you cannot see it at all. I guess one day I could try to match up the pattern, but now it was just time to finish off the bottom portion of the zipper, very similarly to how you would do any other zipper. So just sewing that up with a straight seam using a regular presser foot. Now it's time to add the lining to the zipper. So as you can see here, my lining is way too long, so just ignore that portion. But what you're going to do is kind of use your lining to cover up the zipper, that portion that you can see, and this is going to give it a really nice clean effect. So I have the wrong side of my zipper with the wrong side of my lining. So as you can see on my lining, I have already gone through and done a rolled hem. So I'm just going to take a straight seam all the way up, being sure not to catch the green fabric that's underneath. So now this is what my skirt looks like at this point. You can see that I have a bunch of lining. This was one of the steps where I realized that my lining was starting to get messed up as it was too big. So one way I'm going to handle this, as I want to now start working on the waistband portion of my skirt, is I'm just going to gather the waistband portion of the lining. So to gather, you're going to have your stitch length be as big as it can, so basting, take 2 basting stitches all the way around, and then you're just going to pull one of the threads to kind of tighten it and gather it, and that'll give you a really nice effect. I did this all the way around for my skirt and was able to get the lining to then match the same width as the original waistband, and I also think this gave it kind of a more full and flowy effect, which I'm actually really excited about. So this is what my skirt looks like so far. You can see the lining at the bottom, which again, this was part of my overall lining issue, so be sure you cut that as a very short circle skirt when you're doing it. But now it's time to focus on the waistband. So using that portion of fabric that I cut earlier, the rectangle, first step is just to press this in half. So it's very simple, you just kind of fold it over. Now on one of the edges, I did go ahead and kind of, as similar to how you would do bias tape, folded it over some on itself and then folded this again in half. And then on the long edge, I folded over about 1/2 of an inch and then pressed that so I'd get a nice clean finish. And I'm going to repeat this for the second side. So this is essentially like making your own bias tape, but this is a very big piece of bias tape. And then this was what was used for the waistband for the skirt. So using that raw edge, I just kind of tucked it under into the waistband and then pinned it so I could take a seam all the way around. This will kind of make it so that we can't see any of those raw edges, and we'll have a really nice clean finish for our skirt, so we don't have to worry about it fraying. Now I left about 1.5 inches kind of overlap on one side, and this is where I'm going to be adding my button so that I'd have room to put a button, but then also add a buttonhole. And on the one part where it is not finished off yet, I did that exact same kind of folding in technique so that I would be able to get that really nice and clean edge and not have to worry about any of the raw edges or threads coming undone. Then I just took a seam for a top stitching all the way around. Once I did this, I did back stitch it, so just a very important step to make sure that you are securing all of your stitches for any portion of the skirt, but for this even more so, because that's what's going to have the button on it. So this is what the skirt currently looks like. I love how it was turning out. If you have your lining done correctly where it is that shorter circle skirt, you won't be able to see it. Now though, it was time to start working on the buttons. So I'm going to add 3 buttons up on that waistband portion. And then as you can see here, I was realizing that my lining was done incorrectly, but overall the skirt had a really fun and flowy effect. Now for my buttons, I used these white little buttons that I had gotten from Joann Fabrics. I really like how they kind of add like a stark contrast since the skirt does have white in it already. So I measured where I wanted them to go and then just added a little bit of chalk. And then this was how I was going to also do my buttonholes. So using my buttonhole foot, I changed my sewing machine to the correct stitch. And then I just began working on adding the buttonhole exactly where I had marked it on the skirt. I did my buttonholes horizontally so I didn't have to worry about measuring how they were going to go vertically since there wasn't as much room, and this kind of gave me a little bit more wiggle room for when I was adding the buttons on. So here's what my 3 buttonholes look like. And I just used a seam ripper to open those buttonholes. I always get so worried doing this that I do take quite a bit of time just to make sure I don't rip it. After I had that done though, I just added my buttons. I didn't include sewing it this time. If you want to see that, just let me know in the comments. And here's what the buttons look like when you put them through the buttonholes. It looks so cute. So now it was time to work on the lining. So what I did first before I realized that my lining was wrong, but this is a step you will want to do, which is why I included it, is to tack your lining down. So what this means is using very small hand stitches just to kind of sew it in place so you don't have to worry about it moving around or coming out so that you won't be able to see your lining underneath your skirt. So again, if you have this cut out correctly in that circle skirt manner, you will not have to worry about like these weird edges that I did, which is why I ended up going through and redoing the lining as that I took out these little stitches that I did, cut some of the extra fabric off, and then redid the bottom portion of it. So I'm including this in here just in case you ever find yourself in a similar situation. If your lining is ever too long, there's a really easy way you can fix this. The first is you're going to take out those little darts that we just did. And then what you're going to do is mark around how long you want the lining to be. So however long you want it, I would say to do about 2 to 3 inches shorter. And then what I did was I finished off that edge using my serger. This gave me a really nice clean finish. If you don't have a serger, you could definitely just do another roll hem. But here is what my skirt now looks like, and you cannot see the lining, and it really fixed it very, very easily. Once I had that nice edge done, I did go back through and kind of hand tack the lining on so that it wasn't going to be moving around or shifting where you would see it. This was a very quick and simple fix, and I think you could use it for a lot of different items, especially if you were tailoring something. So that's why I included that in the video. But this is the final look. I absolutely love how the skirt turned out, and I think the fabric is so fun. I can't wait to wear this. I feel like it really has a Greenbrier hotel effect if you have been there at that resort. I had so much fun making this skirt though. I hope you enjoyed watching it and you tried to make one yourself. If you like this video, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and tell me what you want to see for 2023. Thanks.